Hey, welcome back. Here we are, Sunday night, Old Testament study time at Cleveland Community Chapel. We are winding down Ecclesiastes. We're in chapter 10. Looks like we'll finish up on Easter Sunday. And we're working through that part where Solomon is contemplating things. He's been a philosopher. He's looking around at everything under the sun, which is how people that aren't very spiritual look at things. They just see what's under the sun and realize, hey, there's another world besides the one that meets the eye. And as Solomon looks around under the sun, he sees a lot of different things, and he's just writing them down for us. He's like, here's how I see it. This don't mean that these are commands. See, sometimes people take something out of Ecclesiastes and just draw it out of like a fish out of a barrel, and it's you got to put it in context with the entire book. And not everything he says is right over here. He has to come around to that with what's right. So as he's contemplating and looking around, he says in his wisdom, verse 1, one of the things he's noticed is dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savor. I don't know, he opened up his Bengay and it had a dead fly in it and it smelled bad or something. So he said, but he's comparing and contrasting those. So just like a little dead fly can ruin the ointment, he said, a little bit of foolishness, so doth a little folly him that's in reputation for wisdom and honor. And King Solomon been in reputation for wisdom and honor. He's probably said, you got to watch it. Said a little bit of foolishness will mess up your respect, your reputation here. A wise man's heart, he's noticed this, is as his right hand, but a fool's heart's as his left hand. And of course, the right hand was seen as usually is today too, the hand of strength. The wise man's heart strong, but the fool's is weak. Yea, also, when he that is a fool walks by the way, or walks down the sidewalk of the street, his wisdom faileth him. He saith to everyone that he's a fool. In other words, Solomon said, I've noticed that when a fool walks by, everybody knows he's a fool. It's was it Ben Franklin that said it's better to keep your mouth closed and be thought a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. Well, Solomon says that you'll find out that fools will remove all doubt eventually. If the spirit of the ruler rise up against thee, now see, here's one of those verses that it's not telling you, it's just something Solomon's contemplating. It's not like, thus saith the Lord, here's what you got to do, because this is entirely non-biblical or non-Christian. If the spirit of the ruler rise up against thee, leave not your place, for yielding pacifies great offenses. He's saying, just go along with the flow and it's easier. If the spirit of the times don't agree with you, then just be politically correct. Go. He's noticed that. That's the easy way to go, but it ain't the right way to go, is it? There is an evil which I've seen under the sun, as an error which proceeds from the ruler. Folly or foolishness is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in low place. You feel like you're living in that time where foolishness is considered the good thing, and it's exactly the opposite thing of the biblical thing. He says, I've seen this, verse 7. I've seen servants upon horses, and princes walking as servants upon the earth. He says, I looked around and said, I've seen a lot of things that are backwards under the sun. That the servants has been walking, and the prince has been riding and walking, and the servants been riding on the horse. He said, I see a lot of things like that that's just backwards from what they ought to be. We see that too, don't we? Things are backwards sometimes. We live in a fallen world. Verse 8, he says, he that digs a pit will fall into it. And whosoever breaks a hedge, a serpent will bite him. Or that's really the principle from the New Testament that says you'll reap what you sow. If you dig a pit for somebody else, you're liable to fall into it. If you set a trap or stick your hand in a hedge, a snake liable to bite you there. He said, I've seen whoever removes stones. And removing of stones back then was the land markers. If you're trying to cheat somebody out of your land, he says, somebody removing the stones, they'll get hurt therewith. They'll reap what they sow. It'll come back. They'll be moving that land marker and it hurt their back. And he that cleaves wood shall be endangered thereby. Well, there's something to that. If you get out there busting wood, you're running a risk every time you swing the axe. You could chop your foot off, or you could bust the wood. Okay? But it's the risk that you're taking for the reward of getting the wood, isn't it? Risk versus reward. Verse 10, I like this one. As a crosscut sawyer or a chainsaw, you're either one. If the iron be blunt, or axe, whatever it is, if the iron be blunt and he do not whet the edge, then must he put to more strength. But wisdom's profitable to direct. He said, if you're going to get out there and work with the axe or the saw, the chainsaw, or a file or anything else, then you better sharpen it. It's hard to get out there and do a lot of hoeing with a dull hoe. You better sharpen. If the iron be blunt, you're going to have to work a whole lot harder, he said. And he's making the comparison like you got to do that extra work up front to make life easier for you down the road. And that's true. If you're young, you apply yourself in school and you work hard and you do that hard work up front, you'll be glad you did later down the road than trying to go out through life with a dull tool, a brain in this case. Verse 11, he said, I've seen this. He said, surely the serpent, which is a venomous snake in the Bible, serpent means a venomous snake. Surely the serpent will bite without enchantment. He's watched over there before where they've been blowing that horn and making that old snake come out of there. And he said, surely if it ain't being enchanted, it'll bite. That's not necessarily true. It's sort of a trick kind of thing. But he said, surely if it ain't being enchanted, that snake would bite. And but he said, babblers know better. They're just as dangerous as that snake. You better keep them at a horn's length too. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious. Now that's true, ain't it? Gracious words from a wise man compared to the lips of a fool, which will swallow up himself, or they'll be his own snare. You just keep talking, he'll tell on himself. Verse 13 goes along with it. The beginning of the words of that fool's mouth is foolishness, and the end of his talk is mischievous madness. You ever watch somebody like that and you say, well, they started out with foolishness and ended with mischievous madness. He said, a fool is also full of words. They just got to keep going, don't they? They can't quit. A man cannot tell what shall be and what shall be after him. Who can tell him? It sounds like he's had some encounter maybe with one of these psychics, right? So they're just a fool. They can't tell what's coming, what's going to be after you. The labor of the foolish wearies every one of them, because he knows not how to go to the city. I think that's a way of saying what we sometimes say. He's so dumb he don't know to get out of the rain. Solomon, if you read Proverbs, which Solomon wrote too, he's got a lot to say about fools. He didn't suffer fools very well. And he said the number one fool in the book of Proverbs is that the fool is the one who said in his heart, there is no God. So the Bible really says the atheist is the fool. But Solomon couldn't suffer fools, so he said here again, the labor of the foolish wearies every one of them because he don't know how to go to the city. He don't know how to get out of the rain. Verse 16, he's seen this and he contemplates it. Woe to thee, O land. The whole land can suffer for something now. When your king is a child and your princes eat in the morning. In other words, the whole nation's going to get in trouble now if you've got a childlike leader and his cabinet. They're more concerned about, instead of taking care of business first, just going to the banquets and the buffets and the bars, right? It's the whole land. Woe to thee, O land, when they're like that. 17. Blessed thou art thou, O land, when thy king is the son of nobles and thy princes eat in due season. They're taking care of business first. And they're doing it for strength, not for drunkenness. They're taking care of things for the right reason. 18. Solomon in Proverbs has a lot to say about slothfulness, which I love that. It's a word for laziness, but he compares it to that old animal, the sloth, that just barely moves. Slothfulness. By much slothfulness, the building decay. He said, I've noticed this. I've been sitting around on my king's throne, and I've noticed that Laziness causes a lot of problems. He says, in other words, if somebody don't keep up their building, the laziness of not keeping it up, it'll rot and fall down. And through the idleness of the hands, the house drops through. You can apply that to a lot of things. Like if we don't get enough physical activity, this building decays and gets ready to drop and fall down too if we're too slothful and ain't busy enough with in our work. 19. A feast is made for laughter, and wine makes merry. But he says money's the answer for everything. There's a little bit of truth to that, right? Old King Solomon's probably the richest man in the world back then. He says, money take care of everything. Well, it won't. You can't buy your way to heaven with money, can you? Curse not the king, said King Solomon. No, not in thy thought. Curse not the rich in your bedchamber, for a bird of the air. You've ever heard that saying? How'd you find out about it? A little bird told me. For a bird of the air will carry the voice, and that which has wings will tell the matter. Now, originally, Solomon was probably writing this like, you better not say nothing bad about the king, because I'm liable to find out about it. But there is admonitions in the New Testament. I believe it's Peter and others tell us that, we're not to speak evil of our leaders. We don't have to agree with everything they do, but if you don't like Trump, you shouldn't speak badly. And if you don't like Biden, you shouldn't speak badly. You don't have to agree with his policies, but I think as Christians that we should still keep a respect for the office. And we're not seeing that today. We're seeing people say things about leaders that a few years ago was just considered embarrassing and rude, and it's not okay, Christians. The Bible says to pray for your leaders and all those that are in authority. See you next time.